So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. So that in the sixth we see those symbols, that those are all symbols for mortal consciousness in the second record, a consciousness that is building on the falsity of the first five tones, and is doomed to go out. And instead of the mastery and dominion of man as the consciousness of God's own consciousness, really man being God's own consciousness of himself in the sixth day, we have the condemnation of a mortal to tend his thoughts upward from the soil, and it never, ever works. The second degree never works on its own. A great lesson, a fundamental lesson everyone has to learn. Sometimes it does take us our whole experience, our whole life experience, to hone that and fine-tune that through experiences after experiences, to see that the second degree cannot stand on its own. That Abel be killed by Cain. That Abel always be killed by Cain, because only Seth is the answer. Seth, the third son, the spiritual standpoint, the third degree. We need the third degree. And so that is really what is going to happen. At first we come to the seventh day of creation, to love, where we have the declaration that creation is perfect, it is complete, it is finished, that God is fulfilled in his own creation, that he sees it as only good. It's a love as the perfection principle, or the principle of integration. The resting in that perfection, but a dynamic resting. It's, as Mrs. Eddy says, resting in action. God rests in action, and resting in the consciousness of all that has been made. Integrated being, we could say, is what that seventh day wants to show us. The oneness of love and love's idea. And in the second record, it's the exact opposite. Can you hear it? Cain is sent out from the presence of the Lord. Banished from the presence of the Lord. Just the opposite of the oneness of love and love's idea. Right? Is to be sent away from the Lord, from the presence of the Lord. And so the Lord God is unfulfilled in his creation, didn't see good in that creation, banishes man from the realm of the garden instead of the rest and peace and oneness of love with its idea. So you have separation and not inseparability. You have banishment, rejection, excommunication, all the opposites of love, of going into the land of Nod Actually, this is a wonderful, wonderful conclusion to the matter, that Cain goes out and dwells in the land of Nod, dwells in that dreamland, dwells in that land of nothingness. And we see that the integrity is disrupted, and that there is a disintegration of creator and creation. But it is error. It is a depiction of a false hypothesis being resolved in complete exclusion, being completely excluded, and returning to its own nothingness. And this is surely success, the resolution of the second record. And actually we will also take up the fact, or the matter, that John Dorley felt that actually that seventh tone didn't end right there, but it ended with the further experience of Adam and Eve giving birth to Seth, what came out of the line of Seth, and the generations that followed, and the final point of that story was that Enoch was translated. So you have I think a beautiful sense there of the whole workings of the system, the whole workings of the Christ idea, of those two translations working to retranslate that falsity back into the truth of the true and first translation, the translation of immortal mind. So that's a thumbnail sketch of the whole range of the story, and we will do our best over the remaining time to go in depth with it. I hope you want to do that with me.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. See you in the morning then. All right, this morning we are going to start the in-depth comparison between the first and the second records of creation. But before we do that, I wanted to remind you that, when you take the text linearly in the 15th chapter of the textbook, Genesis, that you see that there is a bridge, what is called a bridge, coming in between the presentation of the first record of creation and the second record of creation. This bridge is on page 520, line 16 is the beginning of it. It really starts what is part 2 of the chapter. It comes right in between the first record and the second record, and takes us over to page 521, line 17. What is this bridge that stands between? I think a bridge always illustrates a sense of the Christ, does it not? A kind of a translation or a transitionary thing going on. This bridge, to my sense, is a very beautiful thing because it shows us how we can have access to the first record of creation when we seem to be in the second record, when we are under that claim that we're still working out the second record, and the first record seems to be in a mist, misty to us, and that we are not subjectively one with that first record. What is this bridge showing? It's really showing that there is a Christ activity, a Christ translation going on. We know that this is so in the second record. But we have a little reminder here, I think, of as though the Christ would say to us, don't worry, don't be concerned. It's going on. It's happening. The transformation is going on within you. The retranslation is going on within you. We know that the Christ translation is, as the first translation, taking the truth of the first record of creation and is impacting everything that is not of the nature of reality within us. The claim that unreality is reality is being addressed. So the first translation is addressing the first degree. In the second translation is bringing about a retranslation so that in the second degree evil beliefs are disappearing. There's a transitionary condition going on there until finally, as the third degree, our spiritual character, our spiritual reality is established. So in the third degree, mortal man disappears and man in God's likeness appears, she says, following those two translations. This is what is going on. Now this bridge wants to show us the relationship that is taking place between the first record and the second record within our own consciousness, within our own makeup, as though to show our experience, the experience of the first in the face of the second. What our experience is, what the first is doing with us. And it is doing something with us, to us, through the calculus. So it's very beautiful to see that in this bridge, we again have the four. We have the four. You remember in the first record that we have the four, first as the primal elements of creativity, then we had the seed within itself, then we had the sense of abundant translation with that seed within itself, and then the multiplication and dominion of Christianity, and finally the tone of science, the sense of wholeness and completeness and infinity. Now that is reflected within us, within the transformation process that is going on within each one of us. So we have the four again, and those four are characterized, actually I think it was Max Kepler that characterized them as such. We will see the four first as the primal creativity going on within ourselves as we are being transformed and retranslated out of the belief of a second record back into the reality of the first record of creation. So there's a primal creativity. Then the word as the Christ, a sense of resurrection going on. Then third, the establishing of the eternal factuality and supremacy of the first record within our consciousness. And fourth, that as science, the word as science, creation is understood as eternally intact. It becomes our very understanding. It's in a way showing us how our understanding coincides with the first record of creation and is made to coincide with that first record through the Christ, through the calculus working. And consequently showing us how we are able to stand above the false record of creation. So this is what the first record is doing with us, and We said it begins with that primal creativity, which is brought out through the synonymous terms mind, spirit, and soul. And you perhaps have your text marked. If you don't, you see that sense of primal creativity begins at line 23 and goes to line 30. Line 23 to line 30. The sense of resurrection from line 30 to page 521, line 3. Let's see, have I got that right? Okay, and then the eternal factuality and supremacy, 521, line 4 to line 11. And the creation as understood, eternal and intact, line 12 through line 17. So let's just take the biblical text that Mrs. Eddy is drawing her exegesis from. And that would be Genesis 2, 4, and 5. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth, referring back to the 7 days of creation. Those great generations, don't you feel that cybernetic sense when you hear generation, that something has been generated forth? 7 great generations have come forth. And these are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created. And then there is a break, and there's actually a shift from the Elohistic document to the Jehovistic document. And yet it isn't bad, it isn't something negative. In the day that the Lord God, Jehovah, made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth. Gosh, I love that sense. Every plant of the field, that infinite field, that field of the 7 and the 4, being impelled by the 3 of life, truth, and love, that everything exists there. And when we hear before it was in the earth, you have a feeling something further is coming, a translation is coming, a further level is going to come in. And that it will be a level where there may seem to be another field, another sense of growth, another suggestion of creation, but everything is in place and has eternally been in place. And the field is established, and everything that has come forth from that field and can come forth from that field is already at the point of perfect creation. For the Lord God Jehovah had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. There was no ground-tilling man in that picture. But as though to say, if you have the belief, if you are still of the persuasion that there's another man, that there's a man who has to till the soil and work his way up and come up from the ground and try to reach up to God and find his way up to heaven, then the first record is the answer to this. And you will be saved from this mistaken hypothesis. So she begins, and she really shows now this primal creativity that is at work in us. Here is the emphatic declaration that God creates all through mind, not through matter. That the plant grows not because of seed or soil, but because growth is the eternal mandate of mind. You really have a touch of mind in that first statement, the emphatic declaration that God creates all through mind, then spirit, not through matter, that the plant grows, you see, not because of seed and soil, but because growth is the eternal mandate of mind, beautiful combination of mind and spirit working together, that mortal thought drops into the ground, but the immortal creating thought is from above, not from beneath. Because mind makes all, there is nothing left to be made by a lower power. Isn't that beautiful? And as though then to say to us, you have already within you the immortal creating thought. You have within you already that which is from above. You are influxed by that which is from above. And that which is from above is creating everything within you, creating the true record within you, replacing that false record, creating the true record, and commanding your growth to be going forward. And at the same time, we can see then that Christ as the Word as the Word, is uprooting, will uproot, will unearth mortal thought from its basis. That mortal thought which is from beneath is just beautifully, gently being uprooted by the Christ. That anything that drops into the ground or tends to be in a false cybernetic loop of going to the ground, starting with the ground, and so forth, that loop is going to be overridden by the divine loop, by the creative loop of the days of creation. And so the Christ says, I'm working on you, working on consciousness, to show you that there isn't any other power. There is no lower power. There's no secondary power making something through matter, through seed, through soil. There's only that creation that is going on within you, and its origin is from above, not from beneath. And then we have a touch of the Christ coming in, and we see that primal creativity that is working within us, that the Christ has set within us and implanted within us, that is from above, is bringing a resurrection. It's resurrecting consciousness, resurrecting us through the science of mind. And so we have now those synonymous terms, soul, principle, and life. Are you with me that in the beginning we had the primal creativity, mind, spirit, and soul being established within us, within our consciousness from above. And now we see that this is always bringing a resurrection, always bringing a greater and greater sense of being lifted above the claim of a second record. Through the science of mind, she says, we are made superior to the soil. That this knowledge lifts us above the sod, above the earth and its environments. Can you hear? To conscious spiritual harmony, to eternal being. Can you hear? Soul, principle, life. Let's go through it again. Through the science of mind, principle, we are made superior to the soil. What is that? That's soul, isn't it? That this knowledge, the knowledge of the science of mind, the knowledge of the first record of creation, as we stay with that first record, as we stay with that true analysis, that this has a resurrecting effect on us. We can't help but to be lifted above the earthly sense. This is soul. lifted, another touch, lifted above, another touch of life above the earth and its environments to conscious spiritual harmony, principle, and eternal being, life. And so it's not so, she says, that we are made to till the ground, that we are one with the sod, or in that sod, having to work and labor falsely. So there we have a beautiful sense, really, of the Christ coming in and showing us that those primal elements are working on us. It's not just a theory. It's already implanted within the field of our consciousness, of our individual consciousness, and is working to resurrect us, to exalt us, to lift us above. So we see that it is not a material creation that is going on, it's a spiritual creation. Our very consciousness is being created spiritually, and this goes on and evolves not because of what we do humanly, but in spite of it. So then we see that we have a touch of the word as Christianity. Here the inspired record closes its narrative of being that is without beginning and without end. All that is made is the work of God, and all is good. We leave this brief, glorious history of spiritual creation, as stated in the first chapter of Genesis, in the hands of God. Beautiful sense of seeing that we don't do something. We don't make the whole thing work. We don't take a moral stance, but it is the Christ working, and that all that we can do is to leave it in God's hands. What a beautiful sense of leaving it in that calculus, in that working of God, and see that all is good. We leave it in the hands of God, not of man, in the keeping of spirit, not matter, joyfully acknowledging, there's what we do, to joyfully acknowledge now and forever God's supremacy, omnipotence, and omnipresence. So it's again the reminder to stay with the first record of creation. If you leave it in God's hands, that sense of God, that 7 and the 4, leave it in the 7 and the 4. The 7 and the 4 will uncover to you the unreality of the second record. The second record isn't anything but a falsity, a false sense in our own understanding. Something that has not matured in our own understanding. And as we leave it in the first record of creation and dwell there in that first record, we will see that sense of duality resolve into the equipollence of God, into God's own equipollence. Point coming in. You see that, let's recap it again, that starting on the basis of that true creativity, starting on the basis of mind, spirit, and soul, that God is creating all thoughts within us, creating everything through mind within us, that this is a spiritual creation and not a material creation, that it is from above, soul, not from beneath, that this begins to bring a resurrection. We get the resurrection above the sod. We see that we are lifted above the soil into the spiritual harmony of eternal being. And thus, as Christianity, the eternal factuality and actuality and supremacy of the first record are being established within us, being set forth within us. And that brings us to the fourth standpoint, to the word as science. Creation becomes our own understanding. The first record of creation becomes understandable to us. It forms our own understanding. And as creation becomes understood to us, we see that it is eternally intact, life, truth, and love. The harmony and immortality of man are intact. We should look away from the opposite supposition that man is created materially and turn our gaze to the spiritual record of creation. So to say, don't deviate now, don't get out of that divine loop, that loop of the Christ that is transforming you, that is retranslating your consciousness, that is forming your consciousness to be patterned by the first record of creation. Keep your gaze on the spiritual record of creation because it must be penned on your heart, so to say, engraved on the understanding and heart with the point of a diamond and the pen of an angel. So, from the standpoint of the word as science, creation is seen to be eternally intact. As life, the harmony and immortality of man are found to be intact. As truth, truth says this will be engraved on your understanding. It's being engraved on our understanding all through our life experience. Every experience belongs to that engraving of the understanding. And love says, and don't think that that's a heavy thing, a hard thing, a cruel thing that is going on. Don't think that there's really ever anything in your experience that isn't love. It's love. Why? Because I engrave your understanding with the point of a diamond and the pen of an angel. Isn't that beautiful? That it's with the point of a diamond, so you get the hardness, you get love's hardness, but love's hardness is love. It's love that doesn't allow you to have anything but the fulfillment of love's ideal, love's plan. This is the point of a diamond that engraves the understanding, but it's the pen of an angel. That's love's final word, that you will see that it's all been with the pen of an angel, that we are written upon, that the tablet of our being, the tablet of consciousness, is engraved in the likeness and in the pattern of the first record of creation. So it's as though to show us and to assure us that that is what is really going on, even though now we'll see what that second record is. Don't worry. Don't be concerned, because the transformation is already going on. The Christ doesn't only uncover to you what is unreal. It reverses it. It transforms you. It retranslates you. It reinstates the true record your true record. It saves you from every sense of a false record. You know, we all have the claim of having a record, don't we? We have actually many records. And if you look at life experience, you see that there are many, many kinds of records, that we have records all over the place. Records are kept about us, about our conduct, about our relationship to the government, to the human government. We have records of our birth, records of our growth, records of our education, records of our medical conditions, records of every sort. Financial records, educational records. What else do we have? Driving records, yes, yeah. What our stand is in society. We have records of our whether we're able to pay our bills, whether we're able. Yes, yeah.
And now with the internet, everything that you look at on the internet is captured as part of your profile. It's tracked.
Profiles, yes, yeah. Everything can be tracked. You are traced. Pardon? What? A genetic record, yes, yes. And I often think, if you look at if you've ever seen a medical record of anyone that you love, if there happens to be a medical record that you come upon under the circumstances at hand of someone you love, you read it, you don't know who it is. You don't recognize this one. You don't recognize your loved one or yourself. And so with the first record of creation, the mortal record is expunged. Mrs. Eddy says the mortal record must be expunged. What does it mean to expunge? To erase a record. To erase any record. This is what it means to be expunged. And the first record of creation expunges every trace of a false record. All of those false recordings belong to the claim of a second record. That you did something okay at one point, but then you went off the course, you didn't do it quite right, you know how we try to have a good record, say your credit record. How about that? Have you ever tried to keep a good credit record? It's impossible. Even if you keep that record, someone who's recording it messes it up. So then somebody looks at that record, well, what happened here? And it's something you don't even know about, you see. Yes. There's no bounds for how far back these things can go. And as you say, as we come into the age of computers and high techness, that it seems to accelerate that anyone can look you up, anyone can find out everything about you. And what safety is there? What security is there? If not in the spiritual. It's all to drive us to the spiritual, to see this is where I am recorded. This is where my creation is. This is how I have been created. This is what I am. It isn't only what God is. It is what I am. I am the light of mind. I am the firmament of spirit. I am the dry land of soul. I'm the seed within myself. You see that? I am that system of principle. I'm principle's own system. And so this bridge, I think, is asking us to take that standpoint. It says, let your understanding be one with the truth of the first record. Let there be a coincidence between your understanding of yourself, your understanding of your reality, of what you really are, and the first record of creation, because that is what you really are. At first it seems remote, it seems a bit misty to us. It's a nice concept, we like it, but it's out there. And so this bridge, which is the Christ working in our consciousness, says, take that as your own. Let it be engraved on your understanding and your heart that this is your creation. This is your record. It isn't just God's record. God's record is your record. You are the idea of God. You are the reflection of God, the image and likeness of God.
The most insidious record is the genetic, which goes back beyond.
Yes. Yes, the sense of a genetic record says you don't even have a chance to get things right from your birth, because from your birth everything is implanted. There's a field of genetic belief that you inherit, that you come in with. And it's a false sense of parenthood, a false sense against the fact of the parent mind, and that all belongs to the second record. And we'll see how in the second record we are sent back to the parent mind, to the Father, Mother, God. Find your origin in the Father, Mother, God.
What about cloning? I mean, that brings up a whole other thing of identity.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah.
And Sue, there's a rampant claim now that your identity can be stolen.
Yeah, right. Someone likes your identity better than their own. They want to hide their own record. Huh? They want to expunge their own record, and so they take your record. They take your identity and then use it.
But again, technology is making that easier. I mean, where it's going, like with cloning or whatever, I mean, they can copy your fingerprints or do your eye and manipulate. I mean, it sounds what used to be for us science fiction is really starting to be.
Science fiction is science fact now, so to speak, in that realm. Yes. Yeah.
I got some literature, that says how to keep under the radar screen and how to not leave a paper trail. I didn't subscribe to that.
Are you sure?
What?
You didn't subscribe to that?
I might have. We have the real not leaving a paper trail.
Yes.
That's why I brought it up.
That's right. I like that. Yes, the paper trail is the record, isn't it?
Do this and that, so that you won't leave a trail.
Yeah. How to hide your finances, how to hide your offshore banking and everything. Everyone is trying to screen or cover their records, not to let these records be known, or to create a record that doesn't really exist. You can really buy that sort of service, apparently, have your record cleaned up and expunged. And, well, these are all really belonging to the second record, and we see that the whole of the mortal record must be expunged and is being expunged through the truth of the first record of creation. This is the source of power. All right. That's great, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Be real scary otherwise, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so
It should be scary, because it's, like you say, it's pointing us to the real.
that's right. Yeah.
Get out of this place where there's not any dry land.
Mm-hmm.
Move to the real record.
Yes. Yes.
Isn't it kind of the claim that the second record is gradually reaching the point of perfecting itself as the counterfeit? That you have total control, total manipulation of the human. The entire picture is all tied up in a knot, and it just becomes the finalization of the exact opposite of what the first record is. Seems to me it's just kind of moving to the point where it's going to reach that, and then, what happens? Does it
Then
all
poof.
poof?
Yeah. Poof. Yeah.
Really seemingly feel like you're totally in control.
Yes, totally in control, yeah. I'm thinking of Max Kapler defining or characterizing that second record as like a balloon that begins to inflate and get bigger and bigger and bigger. But the bigger it gets, the thinner, you see, the thinner it becomes until it is pricked. It just is really pricked by that first record of creation and totally disappears into oblivion. Yeah. And also in the fourth chapter of the textbook, do you remember that third part in the fourth chapter, which, by the way, is from the standpoint of love and spirit, or spirit and love, that you have there, she speaks about air raising its voice, screaming louder and louder and louder until its inarticulate voice is silenced in oblivion. You have really beautiful illustration in that third part of exactly what is happening with the second record of creation. You might, when you return home, have a look at that and have a look at it in the light of the structure of that chapter, the structure of that part. It comes up mainly in the tone of truth in that third part, that there is that terrific buildup of error just being louder and louder and seeming more real, and suddenly she says it reaches its zenith. You see, it reaches a zenith, as in the second record you reach a kind of a zenith. It seems to build up to mortality, and it reaches a zenith, and suddenly it goes down and out. And there she says that error's inarticulate voice, a voice with no sound, no voice. Its so-called voice is silenced in oblivion. Yeah.
Page 97.
Page 97, thank you. Yeah. All right, so we are ready to begin. And we begin with that beautiful first record of creation with the first day of mind. And you will be following now in your two layouts, layout from the Bible and the layout of the metaphysical ideas. And you will also be following in the Epitomes book. So you will follow the Epitomes. I will give you the Epitomes if you happen not to have your Epitome book with you for some reason. I will give the Epitomes as we go along. And so that first day of mind is presenting itself. And the great epitome for mind is that mind manifests itself as a creation of ideas. A creation of ideas. And mind as mind says, I create all in ideas. So the first record begins, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. It's now the breaking in. Remember your great context of the levels, the context of that translatability from divine science, of how divine science is coming, is influxing the universe, is influxing consciousness at the further level of Christian Science, coming through the law of absolute Christian Science. Divine science breaks in through absolute Christian Science as the impulsion of life, truth, and love going on and impelling that there be the light, that the light of divine science that illumines the universe break in at the level of Christian Science. That this is breaking in on human consciousness. It's the driving force, it's the evolving force, it's the dictating power within the human condition, this light of mind. Let there be light, and there was light. She says, immortal and divine mind presents something. What is it presenting? The idea of God. Isn't that exquisite? What is this light? It's the presentation of the idea of God. What is God? What is the idea of God? So she says it is presented first in light. We have mind as God presenting God's idea of himself, first in light. And so she says there is no erring thought there, no opposite of life, truth, and love. God creates neither erring thought, mortal life, mutable truth, nor variable love. There's nothing present but the light of life, truth, and love, which is the light of mind. And if we look at the second record, what do we find? The exact opposite, that contradictory, that from ignorance, you see, as the counterfeit of mind now, I take the epitome of the second record at the point of mind, that from ignorance, mystification, arises a false creative sense. And mind as mind, that the darkness of ignorance, the mist of obscurity, evolves a false creative sense. And here, instead of the let there be light, that breaking in right from divine science through absolute Christian Science to Christian Science, now we have the opposite, that there went up a mist from the earth. So you have something not from above, but from beneath. And you have that mist, that mistiness. Mrs. Eddy says this is a false basis, the mist of obscurity, evolved by error and deepening into a false claim, until it finally declares that God knows error. You see what this Lord God Jehovah is. I had something wonderful I wanted to say to you about that. What is that Lord God Jehovah? It's nothing but our own limited view of God. You see, it's our limited understanding of God within consciousness. Anything within consciousness that is not yet fully informed with that true record of creation, this is the Lord God Jehovah. Anything that would still entertain a limited view. So it's the undeveloped understanding within us. The fact that we are as yet somewhat spiritually unevolved. This is the Lord God Jehovah. It's our own spiritual immaturity that would try to take the spiritual creation, anything that would try to take the first record and use it for other purposes, you see, would be the Lord God Jehovah within us. And so it's that uninformed state. You can hear now we go back to exactly what a far from or a near equilibrium system has very little information of its own within itself. It is entropic, you see. Entropic meaning that there is very little information, but that what will happen is that the information of the first record is there in pattern. The 7 are there. The 4 are there. The drive of life, truth, and love is there. The absolutely precisely right flashes of light come into that system to fluctuate it, to perturbate it, to overturn it, to cause it to become more complex, to grow, to enlarge that which is of the divine nature within it, as the sense of ignorance goes out, the sense of unenlightenment goes out. Someone had asked me to talk again about the near equilibrium system, so that was an opportunity.